So good morning to all participants. I am very happy to be here representing the seminar organizers to conduct this session. I am Anil Kumar. I have almost 40 years of experience and worked in different industries and different companies and different functional areas also I have worked. And I had a startup experience in 2000, much early. So when I sit here, I remember about my startup experience in 2000. That time there was no support in terms of any infrastructure or anything else was available. And when we started, we have to innovate on everything, not only on the product or service you have to innovate, but we have to innovate on getting finances. How will you get finance? How will you get the market access? Because you are in India, in the southern part of India, and how will you get access to markets like Japan, USA? So everywhere it was challenges, and we have gone through a lot of innovations, innovative solutions, and we could be successful, and we were working for almost 6-7 years in Technopark Trivandrum. After that, we merged with another company, and then many of the promoters came out. That is a story about that. But compared to that, the startup situation in Kerala and in India has changed a lot. And now Kerala is having a big leap in startups. We are the number one state in terms of startup growth. And we have reached almost, today's speech you might have heard in the main venue, almost 7,500 startups have registered. Approximately 7,500 startups have registered. And the total value for the ecosystem is coming to around 1.7 billion. So that is the situation here, and there are a lot of support measures available. So let us start with the biggest challenge we were facing at that time was about markets, how to get access to the market. Now, due to different policies, different changes in the international scenario, as you know, the latest one on tariff and other issues, a lot of companies are coming to India, setting up the global competence centers in India, global capability centers in India. Many companies are coming to India means your market is reaching India. So how startups can access them? That is the subject we are discussing today. How the GCCs and startups can co-create an environment of innovation. How can we coexist and how we can take the support of these GCCs in developing that kind of a co-creation of innovation in India in an IT situation is what we are going to discuss. I have eminent panelists. Each one will introduce them when they start speaking about us. So let us start the discussion. I have a panelist like Kailash. I have Ajith, Shalini, and Tilak. Tilak is representing pharma. They will give more details about that later. Shalini is from Planview. They are doing that software as a service as well as some products on product management, product development, and project management. Ajith is from Bosch, into a lot of digital technology and digital software area. Kailash is from a company called Idox. So they are doing a lot of public service software internationally. So he is representing that company. More details they will give you. So let us start the discussion. The first point I think I will start with Kailash. Kailash, with your international exposure, experience, and also you are mentoring some startups and helping them in developing that. So what is the future you see in next 5 years for collaboration between startups and GCCs?
Yeah, that's a very good question. My name is Kailash Maisekar. I represent a company called Idox, which is a British multinational company. And we are into government technology. So we basically 99 or 100% of our customers are actually governments all over the world, whether it's a state government, central government, local government. So because of that, what happens is we are always under the scanner in terms of showing value, right? And this is a case with a lot of GCCs. Now, if you look at the GCCs, you may be hearing a lot saying that GCCs are moving from being a transactional center to a value center. Now, when you move to a value center, what are the choices do we have really? I mean, really, if you look at the choices do we have to become, value center, are two: make or buy, right? So when you want to make and we want to innovate and bring some new products and new solutions to our customers, right? There are really if I broadly categorize into these three different approaches of make or buy, is one, either do it in-house, or two, get it from outside. Okay, so if you want to do it in-house, there are two approaches again if you have to do it in-house. One, do it with your own team, right? That means, create an innovation lab within the company, and encourage employees, do all the business cases, use cases, number of use cases, POCs, blah, 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 and all of that, right? That's one way of doing it. Now, not every company, every GCC has the luxury to wait for, somebody to innovate, in probably 2 or 3 years, because everybody has a time pressure, right? To time to market is one of the metrics that we keep tracking all the time in terms of product and product releases. So what we do is we try to collaborate, which is the second way. So now, when you collaborate with startups, there are a number of ways you can collaborate. You can do co-creation, right? You can do joint IP. You can do, there are a number of ways, that you can actually, GCCs can participate with startups, right? So that those are make options. Now, if I look at the buy option, is basically look at your customer requirements, and if there is some startup which has already developed that solution and has matured, the market, or is seeing some traction, just go and do an M&A. So M&A is a very good strategy for GCCs to actually cut down their time to market. So therefore, we as Idox, we have always used M&A as a strategy. So we don't go into co-creation or joint IP, because there are a number of compliances, number of issues, in terms of government regulations and, parent company investing in, in the GCC and all of that. That's a separate discussion for some other day. But what we have done is we have actually taken M&A as a strategy. And I can tell you, in the last 20 years, we have made actually 42 acquisitions. And in just the last 4 years, we have made 6 acquisitions. In just last year, we made 3 acquisitions. And in 2026, we have planned to acquire 3 more, startups. So that's the strategy, GCCs have: either make or buy. If you make, then there are 2 options. If you want to buy, straight away go and acquire somebody.
Thank you, Kailash. We'll come back to that. And next, we'll start with Ajith. Just let us hear his views. Ajith, in terms of strategic priorities, it could be business, it could be technological, but what are the strategic priorities which are driving you to go for a collaboration with GCC, with startups?
Sure. Yeah, it's a good question. So me, Ajith, basically from the same city and Trivandrum, born and brought up here, and did a proud product of C8N. So passed out in '97, and then was in Bangalore in Sun Aeronautics, and then Bosch for the last 21 years. So a GCC, a seasoned GCC that I lead for the last 21 years. So we started operation from Bosch in the software side like 40 years back, and we have grown to a kind of a company of 1.5 billion in the software area itself. So if you look at Bosch per se, we are like basically 4 segments. Automotive is the primary one, which constitute around 60% of our operations and the revenue, and overall 90 billion as a Bosch Global. And out of that, remaining 3 are in the non-mobility, which is in connected industry, then consumer goods, and in the building technologies. So that constitute the remaining 40% of the revenue. So when you look at the strategy and vision, how a GCCs will look at the startups. So before come to the startup ecosystem, look at the curve at which a GCCs were installed in another part of the geo situations, and what is a parent company looks at it. So earlier, the headquarters was giving certain tasks, mostly the defect fix, and that was a very exciting time. We added people. We were fully focused on competency. Competency enhancement was the only mantra. And so we scaled up in scale. So in last, our software part of the Bosch in India, we grown from a single digits to 30,000 right now with us. So it's a large engineering, especially in the challenges at Bosch, we were in engineering software. And unlike the other areas, which is pretty difficult to build. So if you look at a typical S curve, we were in a little happy mode of growing, adding competencies, which was there across this India, and we did it. But then afterwards, what else next? What is the headquarters expect? And what is that we as a company to hold the people? Will you be able to hold all the colleagues of which is experienced 20 years, and what is it they expect out of it? Can you hold the same talent in the same passion? Will it be economical? Will it be viable? So all these challenges will start coming in, and that also becomes a pressure, and they will also, the headquarters also start expecting, what do you bring additional into your ecosystem? So that also pushes us, and I feel we are in the right cusp of things, and it is the right time for these GCC to pivot to a system of startups. So I feel it is no go for being away from startups. Now the question is about what is the strategies and the visions that we can build it up. So definitely startups comes with a key parameters like the speed, the agility, the cost factors, the talent availability towards building solutions. So to look that aspects of startups, GCCs typically also takes quite a bit of a time if their expectation is to build solutions in a faster way and local, hyper-localization. So how do you bring the solutions from the local market and adds to the total global revenue? So this becomes the challenge. Now for us is to bring, I would bet on speed and agility, and which is very difficult sometimes that to go take back every situation back to your headquarters and talk about it and getting it, rather build it in-house here, and we can collaborate with the ecosystem of startups, which is the talent, which we have available, and the deep tech. So typically this kind of engineering softwares takes a lead time. You cannot build overnight, which needs a time of kind of understanding the domain. The technology disruptions happens, but the domain remains there. And domains takes time to create the people, then understand and start adding value. So value creation doesn't happen in a very shorter cycles over there. So the domain remains. So these are the challenges, but so we would like to see a strategy with the startups on the use case understanding. So they should come forward, understand the use case more with us. We are very open to open up that kind of a use cases with them. Technology can be built. We believe in the technology building and talent pool availability in the current situation of India. We are much matured. We have people, in fact, studied from even abroad and coming and starting things over here. So we have global became. And then next challenges that we all, I think the startups have already taken, nobody is trying to be a vendor now. And nobody is trying to build solutions only for the local. The local solutions are becoming global. So, and it's branded. If you look at, for example, automotive, one of the example was Mahindra. Recently, you would have all seen the 6E and 9E which have come. So we all work very closely with them. And you see their branding itself is Inglo. India made for global. So proud to be that a kind of a automotive company is able to bring such kind of a themes into the Indian market, and being very successful in this is very proud moment for us. So that's how I visualize the strategy and vision to come out.
Thank you, Ajith. And let us examine, what are he mentioned about a model of engagement with startups. So let us move to Shalini. Based on her experience in her domain, what are the engagement models which were good or which were successful? Or what are your ideas about, experience about different kind of models like a long-term partnership with the people for product development, or a accelerator program, or those kind of, what could be the strategies you have come across and what are good for engagement with startups?
Thanks for the question, Anil, and great thoughts both from Kailash and Ajith. I kind of wear three hats. One is I represent an organization called Planview. Planview operates across every sector. We don't belong to a single sector. We service BFSI to auto, to oil and gas, real estate, governments. So there's a very broad view. But Planview itself It's about a 40-year-old organization headquartered in US. So we got into the India strategy fairly recently in terms of scaling up. That's my remit. The second hat that I wear is because of this horizontal nature of what we do, I have a privilege of being in the conversations with every one of these organizations going through their transformations. So which gives us a very unique view, which I would love to share. And third hat is, I think for a long time, as an individual contributor, I have been working closely to build up ecosystems, whether through some of the bodies like NASSCOM and, or private bodies like Zinov, etc., and through skill ecosystem, Skill India. So I have been in the thick of how the startup revolution has come in, and I also mentor, etc. So I think this is a very passionate subject for me. The reason I brought up these three lenses is I will share my experiences from all the three. Now, we heard about why would GCCs need startups. We heard about how strategic evolution is already happening for the GCCs. If I step back, some simple facts of why is this so-called GCC becoming very important. Because the intention of GCCs back when it started probably 25, 30 years ago was, oh, you export work for cheap labor, right? That is where it started. We talk of cost to value, it's no longer cost arbitrage, it's all about value creation. Absolutely, yes. But when we flip the lens, 3 or 4 things are happening in the world. One is the change that is happening, whether it's industry, whether it's operating model, business model, people, talent, it's immense, right? That has flipped very intentionally, very deliberately through our attempts to India's advantage. Second is, whether you take geopolitics, you refer to tariffs, whether you look at what I would call a favorable environment for talent to thrive, and whether you look at GCCs as almost an indirect vehicle to market access. You spoke of global, so think of GCCs as Make in India for the world, right? That's what we are doing. But now how do we build this momentum that we have, not just be restrictive to the organizations we belong, but really build up the ecosystem? I think is the biggest advantage. The reason is what we are all exposed to sitting in GCCs is truly global, world-class practices to talent, to technologies, to thinking, which is in my mind an asset that we need to, as a nation, really, really evolve beyond the GCC ecosystem. I think that's where the so-called dating and marriage of GCCs and startups really will thrive. The third element is technology. I think for once technology has become a democratizing factor in my mind. It is truly breaking borders for all of us. It's truly changing equations. I think we heard on the main stage talking about, not even main stage, I don't know how many of you saw this conversation between Debjani Ghosh and Satya, which happened, Satya Nadella, a couple of days ago, where it talks of it's becoming technology diplomacy. So technology is today really driving power centers beyond just evolution and innovation, right? The reason I'm bringing this up is I think this is very relevant to this room. What we can do through models, happy to share. But beyond models, what can we really achieve? I think we haven't still unlocked. So I still feel even though we have done a lot, we have done in quantum, not enough in quality. So with that, I would say some of the very established models, I think the far end of it is an M&A, which Kailash spoke about. I won't go through all this, I'll just buy a company. The most prevalent models that we have seen both as part of this, institutions like NASSCOM, where we have a lot of startup accelerators, is paid POC model, which feels like the most comfortable for GCCs because, listen, GCCs have a lot of aspirations, but they're also within the organizational boundaries of parent entities. Let's not forget that. So I think identifying use cases, domain and depth comes from the organization. Technology comes from startup, I think has been a fairly successful formula for most. The second model I've seen work well is when the organizations have their own internal entrepreneurship programs, drive accelerators / incubators, because what they're constantly looking for is not just funding startups, but really building almost domain-specific startup ecosystem, and that I have seen work with very, very large scale. Look at Target, which has its own accelerator. Look at Lowe's. I think in retail and e-commerce, that's a lot of it has come out. Looking forward to that in other sectors as well. The third model is having truly extremely difficult technology use cases which you would not touch, because most of the GCCs have come from large organizations with huge pedigrees, 100, 200 years. Nobody wants to touch that code. This is our reality, right? We're not always doing the most glamorous work. We're always touching the oldest piece of code, trying to make sure that nothing breaks, world doesn't fall apart while running all of this. So in that case, startups have been a fresh breath of air if you can get the right technology and the thinking to really break some of the most complex use cases. Again, there's an example, like in Lowe's, they brought in explainable.ai to look at what we call a sell-through rate of fast fashion, one of the most complex use cases in retail. And some of this, so if you look at these three models, absolutely it's marriage of domain and technology. Second is how do you build continuous partnership from a core complex use cases where you cannot touch you have your BAU to run. How do you build that? Through skill and speed. And third is really build domain specific. And this is becoming more and more important as technologies like AI are proliferating. You no longer are looking for a bunch of developers, right? If you heard Mr. Wembo on the stage today, he said the last 3 years he's not hired many of software engineers. And that's a trend you see in most organizations. So with all this, I think we will talk probably, if we have time in the later section, of there's another piece to the puzzle, what I call as triple helix. So if you bring academia into the mix, of course, with enough diligence, that adds a very different dimension to really go domain specific. But I think these are the models we have seen, Anil.
Thank you, Shalini. Let us move to Tilak. Tilak is from a different industry sector, but again, setting up the IT support, IT analysis and IT research support for his pharmaceutical company, Japan-based pharmaceutical company in Bangalore. So Tilak, we talked about the engagement models they were talking about. Another question arising is, what are the criteria by which you will evaluate these startups? Because once they know that, they can also be ready for that. They can also prepare themselves in that way. And you are in the process of just selecting probably startups to be identified and then collaborated with. So what could be the criteria you will be using for selecting a startup?
Sure. Thank you so much, Anil. Maybe a quick introduction. I have been with the GCC space for about 26 years. And what Shalini was saying right now, I was smiling, that how the industry itself has evolved, you can find out from the way the nomenclature changed. So we were captive centers 25, 26 years back, and then because that's how it was. And as you were saying, that there was a mantra, your mess for less. So we do your mess for less. But then it evolved. Then it became global in-house centers, GICs, and then came the focus on capabilities, and now we are GCCs for the right reason. The lens has moved, and we are building strong capabilities wherever we are setting up the GCCs in whatever part of the globe. In these 26 years, I've had the opportunity to work for different industries across the globe, and had the opportunity to set up GCCs in India as well as outside. And it has been a fascinating journey. Takeda is a 244-year-old Japanese company, and we specialize in rare diseases, oncology, plasma-derived therapies, vaccines. So as the pharma industry is looking to it, there is a trajectory which you can see everywhere, and Takeda has this vision to be one of the most trusted, science-driven digital biopharma company. And if you have to do that, if you have to be the digital biopharma, I think that's the key word, you have to build up your own capabilities in digital. And digital and data go hand in hand. So that is where the decision of setting up these innovation capability centers came from. And India is the largest center that we have. We have a few other centers across the globe, but India being the largest, we just set this up less than 2 years. And we are about 700 people at this point of time, creating and building the capabilities. because we call these innovation capability centers our the digital heart of Takeda, because this is where all innovations come in. This is where support to all BU/BFs come in. So now, as Anil was mentioning, so we are at an exploratory phase at this point of time, because we are in the process of building the capabilities. But if I have to ask the question answer the question in a generic fashion, I would say that while selecting the startup, I think more than the tech, what really would create a strong bond and a collaboration would be the alignment to the basic values of the company. So, how are, for any pharmaceutical company, patient is at the center of what is being done. So sometimes there is a tendency to focus on the solution itself and the tech itself, but if your focus is on the outcome, if your focus is on the patients, and that focus is aligned, I think that is really helpful. Of course, the founder strength, the deep tech expertise of the startups, those would be things that should be evaluated. The coachability matters, how open the team is for collaboration, and how we can together build a mature model which is fit for the enterprise. And the alignment to values, as I was saying, like in Takeda, for example, there is a decision-making process we follow, which is an acronym called PTRB, Patient, Trust, Reputation, Business, in that order. So this is the core fundamental, and if the startup can absorb that and align to that, I think the partnership would be really, really fruitful. And the last point probably would be the regulatory and the security aspect, which is a bit more in pharma and in other companies also, that is going to be a part of it. But these would be the combination of stuff, I would say, which would be in our lens.
Thank you. But to all of you, like anybody can answer, like any cultural changes are required in GCCs to tie up with startups. So what are the things you look for? I think Shalini or Kailash or whoever wants to answer.
I think he touched upon some really important ones already, right? Alignment of values. Very easy to say that, because the startups are looking at what's my next step in my either seed funding or milestone. So there are different life choices happening, right, in a startup's life versus an enterprise life. So I think starts there. When you say cultural changes, there are some realities. I spoke of a few. GCCs are part of large enterprise institutions, have enterprise realities. Not all good realities, but they are realities. So how do you work within that? While it becomes a responsibility of the GCC leader / whoever is the sponsor of the program, but that's a reality. Second would be the reality of a startup is that they bring nimbleness and agility. So cultural changes has to happen on both sides. So which means if you're bringing in for agility and then you slow them down, there is 0 point. So I think having that true understanding of what is your ETVX and really have some outcome orientation is a cultural change for a lot of GCCs too. Okay, so I think fundamentally starts there. Second is I think having a real start-stop, which sometimes do not happen. These are not open-ended things. You have to have a business case, a use case. You start and stop is also something which I've seen not being really followed as a due discipline. The other thing is, in startups are by nature about experimentation, prototyping, POCing. Enterprise is always about, let me first fix all the boundaries and then go into the new things, right? It's all about having the sturdiest foundation, being accurate, being reliable, your security, data access. So I think very different dimensions of the same come together. I think it's very critical how do you orient the two. The rest, I think, are very important, but in my mind, if these things become, like when we say, 36 gun milte hai, so if you get these two done, I think the rest will follow suit.
We'll take some questions in between, and then we'll continue the discussion, isn't it? So, can somebody want to ask questions up to whatever we discussed? Just shoot it, and then we will answer. Just give a mic to him. Hand over a mic to him.
So my question is around, one major issue which most startups and service companies face. So there's a lot of consolidation happening with GCCs for the vendor empanelment, and it's slightly difficult to entry in terms of compliance and things like that to get empaneled among the vendors. So how do you see that working out?
Look, as a startup, this is one of the friction points when collaborating with startups. You can add more, but one of the things, as a GCC we are expected is we should have enterprise grade governance. Governance in terms of our procurement policies, governance in terms of our compliances, regulations, or internal, project related or, product related governances. So we have to follow the guidelines, global guidelines of procurement policies, right? So therefore, sometimes it can be very frustrating for startups because, it takes little longer. Everything goes to some team, once a BU has decided I want to work with this startup, right? Then, the contract goes to the legal team takes its own time to review. Then the procurement teams, negotiates on the terms and conditions. You go back to the BU following up. I know it is very frustrating, but I think this is a cultural shift that, we were talking about, that startups need to have, that if you want to work with GCCs, I think you should have at least 5 truckloads of patience right behind you. So
Yeah, I do really echo. I think all of us echo to all the points he has mentioned. But one thing which I could also say that there is a big shift in the mindset. Okay, it's there. Okay, it's not only that now that grandparenting has gone, the era has gone. Okay, so now the leaders over here, if you look at, came into the leadership because of adding competency. Now the time has gone. Okay, if you tell the same story back, nobody is there to listen now. Okay, so now the question they are asking: are you innovating? Are you competent in the world? Are you able to create revenues? These are the questions which is asked. Now there is no go. Okay, it is a question of that. I do agree because the governance and all things are out there. Okay, but if you have this kind of 5 tons of patience with you, but don't get frustrated, it is a need. Okay, there is a mind shift there. So for sure, it's going to, the lens is on and you will see the results for sure.
I'll tell you where this all started also, right? So the reason the governance exists is not because we love governance. It's because we're responsible for the thousands of organizations and potentially millions of lives in some form or fashion. So coming back, because I've been part of the startup ecosystem for a very long time, I can tell you one of the biggest friction points when we would even bring a startup conversation was quality. Okay? The bar of quality that we would set for some reason was not there. We're definitely getting a lot better now. Is there a process which still measures you in that quality area and not here? Maybe those are some realities. So I think we can talk offline on many aspects, but the empanelment as a process, as a traditional vendor versus how you go as a startup, a lot of organizations creating parallel channels, which is where incubator programs, accelerator programs come in, where you don't have to go through all these hoops, you're really focused on outcomes.
I'll just add just one quick point, and again, I think Shalini touched upon it. The vendor empanelment part, I don't think at the current stage that is going to be a challenge, because why the organizations would look for partnership with a startup is the need is very specific. So I think it depends on the quality and the impact of the solution that you are proposing to the business problem. If that is compelling, then that empanelment, there are different ways to get the empanelment done. The way you evaluate the vendors is very different, because the large organizations work with the big consulting companies of the world, which is an already existing ecosystem. So there is a reason why they have to move beyond it, and in that case, that empanelment process also needs to tweak, and that should be there. But if your focus is on addressing the business problem, I think the rest would follow suit.
Ajith, I have a point to discuss with you. You mentioned about the deep tech companies.
Yeah.
So deep tech companies, there are a lot of new startups coming and they are specializing in some area. They are producing some IP also. So when you collaborate with them as startups, how will you protect their IP? How will you ensure that their IP is protected?
It's a very tricky question. Okay.
No, for Kailash, I won't ask because he said merger and acquisition. So this is sold.
Yeah. See, it's not a very straight proposition for sure. Okay, maybe from the experience, what we have seen is, okay, startups, regarding the funds, they are in a dire need of a fund and other things. They are okay to have the IPs with us. But when they want to scale up, okay, they also have this ambition to have the IPs with them. So we try most of the times in the midway, co-create and hold it together. So it is always a tough proposition. So I believe that IP is not a very straight conversations that we do. But in a deep tech, when it comes to that, it needs also kind of a situation that lots of money has to be put in, okay, because of the longer period of the cycle that it has to go through it. So I feel most of the times the IPs resides with the corporates, and mostly the startups get the solution done from them is the proposition which is going on a larger scale. But things may change. Okay, that we'll have to wait and watch from our experience, because we have if you look at from our side, we have actually into the use cases of ADAS, okay, in the automotive, if you take, which is of a most, from a technological perspective, where the AI, okay, the agility on the kind of a things which is fastly the techs are coming in, okay. So that's the area that startups can come and contribute with us. And as you know, see that the entire automotive is getting disturbed in the SDV is the norm that everybody talk about, software defined vehicles, and the car is trying to become like a mobile. So the kind of a guy who makes more money will be the one who makes apps, not the platform. The one who makes mobile is not getting more money. The one who makes apps gets more money, right? So that's a kind of a paradigm shift which is happening. Okay. So we will see all these changes which is happening in this space.
You wanted to add, Kailash?
I just want to quickly add and on this one and just give one example. So just to answer your question, if you want to cut the line and get to, there are a lot of GCCs, not just GCCs, but also Indian companies are taking a different model now, approach. So for example, I'll give you GeoNext. Reliance has created a platform called GeoNext. So anybody can literally participate in GeoNext. And there are many such. I'm just giving one example. What happens with GeoNext is, they basically, if you have a solution, you have a product, you go and talk to the GeoNext guys, demonstrate your product. They will first use it within Reliance. If it works for Reliance, it will actually, you will own the IP. They will go and market your product. There will be a revenue sharing agreement between you and Geo, right? That's so now a lot of companies, what I'm trying to say is, are pivoting towards, newer models where, there is a lot of IP ownership with the startup, while there is a benefit for somebody. So, and there is a validation also. There is a product validation within the company. If it works for Reliance, it will work for everybody else. That's we know. If it works for Tata, works for us. If it works for Adani, I don't know. But yeah, works for everybody. So the principle is, if it works for us, it may work for others too. So look at such platforms. And if you really are interested, there's a lot of platforms. Cisco Launchpad is another platform. There's a number of them, you can take a look. And these are open innovation platforms. Basically, these are open innovation platforms that you can use and you can cut through the line.
So another important stakeholder in this collaboration is academia. So academic institutions have a big role in that. So madam, can you explain what is the role academia can do in speeding up this kind of a collaboration between startups?
Sure. Before that, by the way, IP also, there's a big stakeholder, which is government. Okay. IP creation, IP management. it's not easy in India, irrespective of state governments. Anyway, academia, I think it has been. Somebody spoke of Silicon Valley model. I think again it was Mr. Wembu, and how some of those models don't apply. You can't just replicate. But at the same time, one of the reasons some of these thriving ecosystems exist when we all look back and do research is because there is a very, very strong partnership with academia. We have some of the best educational institutions, but we continue to have that as somewhat of a weak link. But what I have seen in the last decade and a half is not just the big IITs and IIMs, but also in the next level, NITs and even some of our local private institutions. They're all building up two things. One is startup incubator programs at a student level, a third year, fourth year level. But also second is having the professor-based research programs focusing on use cases. It's still not at scale, but is happening in pockets. I think these two continue to be the vehicles which institutions help take leverage, because especially when you go into domain-specific hard use cases, you really want to work with that professor, that department who are really doing deep research. The biggest friction still comes as academia runs in a very different rigor. The speed is different. While you talk of this paradigm of, if you look at the continuum of speed, startups are at the fastest level, GCCs are somewhere in between, and academia is on the other spectrum. So that's the reality. And there is a reason. Without depth, without rigor, without having all those, they will not be able to push for their next level of publication, etc. So I think what we have found as some of the middle ground is when you bring in academia, when you bring in startup and then the organization in between, number one, you have to play the middleman. Number two, academia can bring in conceptual research-based understanding, but probably not push for publication ownership. You let them do their thing. But then how do you take that concept, marinate it with your organizational context, use startups to actually start building them at scale and speed? It's probably the best place where we can start moving, is what we are seeing now. I think a lot more to be done, The other second one, and then I'll close this, is this is purely on academia basis, where we are looking at domain-specific curriculum building, etc. So you start working with academia in their third or fourth years, to build cohorts around your industry, your organization. So you're building talent, but also that drives into young, early stage startups coming in with that domain-specific talent. This is working. Some of the large mega GCCs absolutely are pushing for that. At least back in Karnataka, state governments are also pushing this model forward. So I think that's also, I'm positive that that model will help further.
Thank you, and we are almost exceeding the time, but last one more question we can address, if there is any questions from the participants. Yeah, just give the mic.
So the question that I have is, how are you addressing the demand-supply gap in AI? That's the first question. And the second question is, how much dependent are you on the large consulting company for your AI transformation? And how much are you willing to give it to a startup consulting company?
No, you asked 3 questions. So the option was only one question. So I'll take up the question about, how do you work with, these large consulting companies. Now I'll tell you, why we actually work with large consulting companies, and that goes back to the point that I said about, we have high standards of governance, right? So generally there is a trust that's already built with, large consulting companies, big 4, big 5 consulting companies. There is a trust factor. So whether you're doing your auditing work, your transfer pricing, IP, your taxation, whether direct, indirect, whatever you do, right? So that's one part of it. And because of that, there are these non-assurance services that these, big 4 actually bring in, which are your consulting, because they have this global data, which they can bring in and prove. They have this global know-how of where the industry is moving, what models are being, adopted, and where the direction is going. For example, I was talking about the GeoNext model, right? That actually came from Big 4 That's not Jio's idea, right? Someone from Big Four actually suggested them, why don't you create an open innovation platform like this, and you can actually do wonders. I think on GeoNext platform there are about 2,000 startups registered already, since the launch. So there's a trust factor that is already there with them. However, we are not shying away from working with startups who are into consulting area. Trust me, the new labor codes, that are being published right now, we are actually working with smaller consulting companies. We are not working with KPMG. I'm sorry if KPMG, if somebody is there. I was just taking it only for the purpose of the discussion. But we are actually working with the people on the ground who actually know what the regulations are. So we're working with lawyers, small law firms. We are working with them on how do we actually transition to the new labor codes. So if there are areas where we see there are opportunities where we should work with, startups or smaller consulting companies, we definitely do that. But when it comes to governance, there's no compromise.
Thank you. We need to wind. Sorry.
Sorry. One of the bigger reasons, if you're talking of generic consulting, I will offer you a bunch of QA engineers, bunch of developers. Okay. Because AI consulting again comes down to domain. If you can demonstrate domain, today again you have so many AI consultancies. What we all are looking for is somebody who can help us with our use cases.
So we have listened to all the panelists. There are a lot of opportunities with GCCs, and try to utilize it by aligning with the culture, keeping the quality up, and also helping them to achieve their needs, like time to market. Kailash was mentioning about time to market. He is looking for technology partnership, deep tech and technology partnerships, and also utilize the support of academia also in speeding up your journey of startups. And anybody want to quickly exit, please contact Kailash. Thank you all.